how do we reach new music learners that are adolescents, right? There's so much on new music learners in elementary school, but most of my day was dealing with beginning guitar students in art, music, and culture. How do I teach them now that they're 14, 15 years old, but they have no musical background except for some general music in elementary school?
Welcome to the Choir Baton, a podcast designed to engage with people in stories, ideas, and inspirations stemming from choir. No other art form, no sport, no hobby, no business requires a group of people to execute a communal goal with just their voices. Join me, your host, Beth Philemon, as I interview guests who are singers, teacher conductors, instrumentalists, and community members. Together, we'll ask questions, seek understanding, and share insight from our experiences in life and in choir. Hi, Choir Baton community. It's Beth Philemon, your host. I wanted to take this time to share with you that I recognize we are uncertain about how the future of choral music will continue to look in comparison to how we've sung, rehearsed, and performed for the last 100 or so years. Choir Baton is here to be a place for you to continue to gain insight, encouragement, and professional development through this time. Just because we're not singing like we have been singing for hundreds of years does not mean that singing will cease. It does not mean that singing with others will cease, and it certainly does not mean that singing is not important. While we are uncertain of what rehearsals are going to look like, we can be certain that we are a part of an art form that has been at the forefront of innovation for thousands of years. Think back to the development of chant, like how different types of organum influenced how music was performed in the church and further developed into harmony. And think about the Council of Trent and how people argued about homophony versus polyphony, or even when Beethoven decided to write a symphony that used choir in it, and people thought that was crazy. I can continue to cite plenty of examples of how choral music has changed and innovated over the years, and those are even examples before we had recording devices. Now we're facing another innovation. I challenge you to think of how you can be a part of this. I challenge you to not be discouraged. I challenge you to accept disappointment, yes, but to also seek solutions. Seek opportunity and be excited for the possibility of something new to come from this. We know that in life, some of the greatest advancements have been through times of darkness. We know that in life there are times of heartbreak and there are times of happiness. And in all of those times, choir is there to celebrate, to remember, and to honor the experience. My dear friends, we are still called to that same mission. We are still called to celebrate. We are still called to remember and to honor. We are called to sing, and we are still called to sing together. How fortunate are we that so many of us have the opportunity to engage with others through technology amidst this? How fortunate are we that so many of us have access to virtual calls and recording equipment that enable us to make music with one another, even though we cannot be in the same room together? There are thousands of people in the United States and in the world that are a part of choirs that do not have technological access like we do. There are thousands of people unable to be a part of a virtual choir if they wanted to. They're unable to listen to a podcast about choral music or even just to listen to choral music on their phone and sing along with it. Even though things are different, I challenge you to embrace the opportunity to realize the privilege that many of us even have to be a part of a virtual choir if we wanted to. I challenge you to embrace the privilege that you have to teach students, that you do have for even those students that are showing up for Zoom classes. Embrace the privilege that you have of being able to listen to music on any of the devices that you want in your home. Y'all, we have so much to be grateful for. And while we have much to be uncertain about for the future, we must lean into the fact that innovation is the key to ensuring that more people keep singing, that more people start singing, that more people are singing together, even if that's online. I'm excited to bring today's episode to you because it's an example of how someone found innovation in music education even before the pandemic. I was connected with Sarah Gulish through Instagram, and you're about to listen to an Instagram live recording that we made a month ago. Sarah's story is an amazing example of how someone found a problem within the music education industry and is delivering a solution. I challenge you to think of how you might be inspired by what Sarah shares. Maybe innovation for you is not creating your own e-publishing commerce site for music, education materials. Maybe innovation for you is simply trying a new computer program or app. Maybe innovation for you is just even teaching something online. Maybe it's emailing singers once a week, or maybe innovation is just listening to different kinds of music and thinking about how you could program that for your students, whether it's online solo repertoire, small groups, or more. No matter how you choose to engage with this new era, I urge you to embrace it, because if we don't, who knows what will happen? And I refuse to even entertain that idea.
What's your musical journey and to F flat and all the things?
Yeah. So I am a full-time music teacher. I teach public high school. I've been at the same school since I graduated in 2007. So I was a music education major, piano concentration. I started off as a choir teacher, and then I switched to instrumental, actually, mostly because my school didn't have an orchestra program, and I wanted to build one. So I teach high school guitar, orchestra, and then a class called Art, Music, and Culture. That's basically a collaborative arts course, and every kid takes it to graduate. So I see the entire student body, which is awesome. So musicians, non-musicians, everyone. It's really cool. So that's a little bit about my day job. And then I did my PhD at Temple University in 2014 in music education. And kind of hit a crossroads where I was deciding to go into higher ed or stay in public school teaching. And I ultimately decided to stay in public school and then just adjunct on the side. So I do adjunct for Temple and Buffalo State for their online programs. And then last year I was taking a sabbatical. I was trying to get one of my books published, and I've done publishing before. And I just became super frustrated with the model of publishing for academic work. Authors don't get rights to their work. They don't make much off of their work. You know, I'll get royalty checks for $6 from my one book. So I really wanted to self-publish, but I knew that if I found other people to do it with me, we could build a stronger platform versus me just putting my stuff online. So I teamed up with some of my friends who are also authors to launch our website last summer. And my brother happens to do web development and graphic design. And so I had brought this idea up to him last year, and he was like, oh, I can build that for you. And that sounds like a great idea. Let's do it. So I run the company with my brother, not in music education. He's learned a lot through this, and he actually lives in France. So we work remotely with each other every day. So that's a little bit about my background.
I love that. Okay, I have so many questions, but what's your school like for you to be in a place that you can offer that music and culture class to the entire student body? That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, when I was hired for that class. I think they started it in the 90s. The idea behind it when it was first started was let's culture our students. So let's give them tons of knowledge in the arts. And it was more of sort of a music and art history class. And then when I came to the school, they said, we don't really want it to be that. We want it to be more experiential. So me and my co-teacher, I do teach with an art teacher. So there's two teachers in the room. Me and my co-teacher, we redesigned the curriculum. So now it's based on creativity, and it's all project-based learning. Students select all of their projects that they do. It's very hands-on. So they do filmmaking, they do art making, they do music making, they do drama, poetry, they write raps, they do all sorts of things. It's really fun. That's like
amazing.
Yeah.
And there needs to be more of that, because there's I feel like there's such a strong desire for students to have that, and teachers that we've never been taught how to do it, and we don't know how to teach.
Yeah. Yeah. And what is exciting for me is that, these kids are sophomores, so I get them a year into their high school career, and some of them, since it's the entire student body, some of them are in orchestra, some are in choir, some are in band. Some of them dropped out of band in 7th grade because they think they're no good at music. Some of them have never played an instrument and don't think they have any music capacity, and watching them play in a band, learn the bass guitar, sing for the first time, and seeing that shift in identity, that is the coolest thing. And so I love it. It's the best part of my day, hands down.
I have chills like just envisioning that, because as a point of entry I'm so passionate about is for people that have, especially if they've had a negative experience like that, but like that entry point into the arts. So I'm just curious then, how do, especially your instrumental colleagues, but I know you're also the instrumental teacher as well, how do you then balance the inexperienced versus the experienced players and singers?
So the main music project we do in that class is much like informal learning, modern band. So students break up into friendship groups, they pick a song to cover, they learn instruments, they sing. And we actually put students in groups in that class based on this survey we give them, where we try to figure out who they are creatively and figure out what experience they have. And so in every group, there's a balance of students who have played instruments before and students who haven't. It's very rare that we have a whole group of students who have never done anything related. And so what's cool is every group is different, right? Some groups operate off of notation. Other groups play completely by ear. Some groups use YouTube tutorials. It's very just dependent on the kids in that group, how they decide to learn and what they decide to play.
That's amazing. Do you find that boosts your entry into ensembles then? Do a lot of kids come to your ensembles because of that class?
Yes. And I've seen that transition because I've been there since 2007. And so I taught the class before it got redesigned, and then I've taught it since it's been redesigned. Choir is a big one because, there are students who can sing and they sing in that class. And I share an office with the choir director, and she will run in the room and go, "Who is singing? You are amazing. Join choir. This is awesome."
Yeah.
And so many of those kids we found, it's not that they don't want to be in ensembles. And I think this is really important for us to remember. It's that they've never had someone say to them, "You should do this," right? And I think there's a mindset, I've heard other music teachers say this, well, if they wanted to be in my ensemble, they would just join, right? But that's often not the case. It's those kids who, they just need a cheerleader. And so if you're a cheerleader, they're going to join. I've definitely had kids, I teach orchestra, so I've identified kids who quit their freshman year, who quit coming into high school because of scheduling problems. I've pulled them back in. And also, I run our guitar program, and that's starting with beginners. And so a lot of kids will then take either beginning guitar or piano lab. So they do end up filtering into music classes from art, music, and culture.
That's amazing. That is amazing. That's always good for me to hear, because I have really struggled with not also wanting to like push people to, right? Like there's that fine line of wanting to people to do something because they want to do it versus pushing them into doing something. But that's so important to hear that you don't know what other baggage singers especially bring with them, but any musician brings to something, and for you to say like, this is important, like, you would be good at this. It's huge.
Yeah, so I can tell you a story, a specific.
I love it. Yeah.
I did my dissertation on an event at my school. So I did a case study on this performance event we have every February that's actually run by a science teacher, believe it or not. So he started this back in the 90s. He wanted to give students a coffee house-like experience in school. So he converted the cafeteria to make it feel like a coffee house, and anyone could come and perform. And so this has grown through the years to the point that this year at Java Jam is what it's called, we had 45 acts. So that's 45 acts of multiple students signing up to perform. And our school isn't huge. We have about like 650 students in the entire high school. So it's a good percentage of students that do this, right? So I did a case study on this because I found it to be super interesting that this was one of the strongest ways that kids in our school learned music outside of ensembles, and it wasn't even run by a music teacher. So super unique situation. There was this kid, Shane, who I had in art, music, and culture. He didn't want to be in the class, which a lot of kids come into that class that way because it's required. And for his band project, he sang just because he didn't feel like playing an instrument. And his voice was so good. And everyone in the class just said, Shane, you're amazing. Where did this voice come from? All of this. So we had talked about him performing at Java Jam. He ended up doing it. And so he was one of the subjects in my case study. And one of the things we had talked about was, would you ever do choir? And he was very adamant, no, I would never do choir. That's not for me, right? We kept encouraging him to do it. Well, his senior year, he joined choir. And then a few years after graduating, he sent this long letter to me and my co-teacher and just said, I want you to know how impactful singing in that class was for me, and how being known as the kid who can sing well changed my identity in high school. And, you know, we don't get those emails often, but we really pursued him. And if you just judged from his body language and the words he was saying, you would think, oh, this kid doesn't want to do it. He's just doing it because he feels obligated. But, you know, it was a big part of his life. And so I think about Shane often, and I just think about the other kids in front of me who seem hesitant, and I just wonder if it's from lack of encouragement or lack of self-belief, or because they don't really want to do it. And so figuring that out can be tricky, but
I guess the hard part is like technically it's not our job to figure that out.
Right.
Which is hard.
Yeah. So, and luckily my colleague who teaches choir, we're very close. We have very similar teaching philosophies. She's very involved in all of these extracurricular opportunities as well. So she's a great encourager, supporter, gatherer.
So I'm curious about your route to getting your PhD in music education. You know, we have a lot of people that listen to the Choir Baton podcast and they think higher ed is like the place to be. I mean, I just absolutely love that you got your doctorate and you are not at the academia, university, like full-time stuff, that you still maintain a classroom. Could you just talk a little bit about that in general and get more specific if we want?
Yeah, sure. So I had a sort of an interesting route into a PhD program. It wasn't that I graduated from college and said, I'm going to do a PhD in music education. I actually, this is kind of an interesting backstory. I tried to quit my job. So I was very burnt out my first few years teaching, and we hear that all the time, right? Teachers who get 3-4 years into music ed and they just think, I can't do this the rest of my life. Right. This is too hard. My husband and I decided, you know what, we're going to move to Europe. And I said, I'm going to do an accompanist program. So I'm going to work on getting better at playing piano and put teaching on the back burner. Well, his dad ended up getting sick. And so I had applied to all of these programs in Scotland. His dad got sick. We decided we couldn't leave the States. And one of my references was a professor at Temple. And she knew that I wasn't going to do the program. And she said, well, look, we have an assistantship in our PhD program next year. Why don't you come here instead? Why don't you start a PhD? If it's not for you, don't finish it. But, you know, take a year and be on campus and try it out, which was wonderful. And she's been such a great mentor to me. So I decided to do that. I tried to quit my job. And my superintendent at the time, who I love dearly, she actually called me on the phone and said, we have an educational leave of absence. I'm not letting you quit. If you decide it's not for you and you don't come back, that's fine. Then we'll hire someone for your job. But if there's an ounce of you that thinks you might come back, then that would be a win for us. And so I am looking back, like, that's just such a rare situation, right? For a superintendent to support her music staff to the point where she had that personal relationship and like really supported me trying to better myself and go back to school. So that's what happened. I didn't really think I was going to come back to the classroom. Like I said, I was very burned out. I was disillusioned. I was teaching the art, music, and culture class in the old format, so it still wasn't meeting these expectations that I had for it. And then just taking a year away, diving into research, looking at what was out there, it just reframed my whole mindset. And I thought, wow, if I go back in the classroom, I want to do X, Y, and Z. I think I could be a better teacher. And so I actually went to Java Jam that year that I was working on my PhD. I saw a bunch of my former students and they said, hey, when you come back next year, let's start this, let's start that. And I thought, all right, I'm coming back. Like, I have unfinished business. So it was an easy decision for me at that point.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
And you're right. Like, so I can't, so rare, but also a testament to you and how awesome you are, and the fact that they recognize that and didn't want to lose you in that. So I'm so curious, within that year, like, what were some of the revelations that you had that reframed how you approached the classroom?
Well, Lucy Green blew up my world. Do you know about Lucy Green?
I don't, but I'm writing that name down right now.
I started reading her research and I just felt, so here was my big question going into my PhD. How do we reach new music learners that are adolescents, right? There's so much on new music learners in elementary school, but most of my day was dealing with beginning guitar students in art, music, and culture. How do I teach them now that they're 14, 15 years old, but they have no musical background except for some general music in elementary school? And so Lucy Green, she is from the UK. She did a ton of research on how popular musicians learn. So that was her first big study, how popular musicians learn music. So she just spent time with popular musicians, seeing what their patterns were. And then she took that and developed it into a curriculum for the classroom. She has a book called Informal Learning in the School. And she developed this program that now has turned into what's called Musical Futures. And Musical Futures is a website, again, run out of the UK. And it's basically a total reframing of general music at the secondary level, where instead of focusing on music appreciation, students are doing. So students are playing popular music. They're playing in friendship groups is what they're called, and they're learning informally. So they're learning through informal means. So watching the transformation of the students she worked with, reading her research, that just totally changed my mind. Students where I felt like I couldn't reach them before, it changed my mindset that I'm just not doing the right thing. Like, they can be reached. So that was a big shift for me. Also a big shift in realizing, I don't know how you felt when you went into teaching, but I was so stuck on what I was teaching. So in my mind, my end goal was high school choral teacher with a huge choral program. And I was doing all sorts of other things. I was doing middle school choir, and I was doing guitar and, art, music, and culture. And I just realized, no, it's not actually the class that I'm teaching. It's more the way I'm connecting with students. And I'm passionate about meeting students who aren't currently met. Rollo Dilworth? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I worked with him that year. I was his TA. Okay. He is a magnificent educator. If you've ever seen him work with students, it blows me away the way he connects with students. And so much of what he does has nothing to do with it being choir. It can be adapted to any learning situation. So when I left that year, I just thought, I want to reach the kids who aren't being reached. And in our district, that was orchestra students, because the program ended at 8th grade. And it was kids in beginning guitar and art, music, and culture. And so I just totally shifted my focus. And luckily, the principal at my school was excited about that too. She was very much on board with, yes, we should start this program.
Yeah. That's amazing. So it's Rollo did, I say that because we're on a first name basis. We're not. But we
We'll let you call him Rollo.
Cool. I'm here for it. He did one of our state elementary honor choirs a couple of years ago, I think, and it was the best. I mean, it was just fascinating to watch him work with the kids, and they sounded excellent, and they were like here the whole time. So I have no doubt in believing that.
Yeah. I know. I see some other people have worked with him as well. He's just amazing.
Yeah.
I also danced with him at a wedding, so that's probably my biggest claim to fame. That's my biggest accomplishment so far in my career.
I'm gonna make like a podcast like thing, and I'm gonna be like, instead of having a quote, I'm gonna be like, she danced with Rollo Dilworth at a wedding.
That's great.
That's amazing. And points to anyone out there that's watching this that has Photoshop skills and that can make this happen as well. So we have a great image of the two of you. If there's not a picture of it happening
next to me, yeah.
There you go. Exactly. No, I love that so much. So with the Lucy Green, how is she still living?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm really excited. I'll definitely want to check that out. So you did 1 year of coursework, and then you went back into the classroom and continued to do everything as well?
Yeah. So I did 1 year of coursework. I loaded up because I didn't know if I would be back or not. And then I was TAing, for Rollo and a couple other classes. And then I did coursework in the summer, some independent studies. And then the following year I would go teach, from 7 to 3. And then I would drive to Temple and take evening classes. And so I was full-time student, full-time teacher for 1 year.
Okay.
And then the next year I wrote my dissertation. So I did it really quickly. Yeah. And part of that was because once had I not decided to go back to the classroom, I think I would have stretched it out, and that would have actually been good for me, just to have more time really diving into research and writing. But once I knew I was going to go back teaching, I only had a year off, so I had to kind of make it happen quickly.
Yeah, and I know you kind of fell into that position into being at Temple and that program, and it all worked out. But I also believe like you learned so much when you're there of questions that you should have asked or things you should have looked for as you were pursuing a program. And would you mind sharing with us like what are things that you would recommend people consider as they're looking for a doctoral program?
Okay, so I think a lot of it has to do with who your advisor is. I will say that my advisor, she wasn't an expert in informal learning or in the areas that I wanted to study, but she was such a supportive, I'm talking about Allison Reynolds at Temple University. I'll give her a shout out. She was such a supportive guide for me, and she connected me with the people I needed to be connected with. So that was huge for me. So from my very first year, she connected me with a conference in London that was on rock and roll and music education. And those people I met at that conference in London ended up being my biggest mentors. One of them edits for our site now, and just so many different connections in music education. So I think having that mentor that you have similar philosophies that really supports you, and that for me, I wanted rigor. So I wanted lots of involvement. I wanted her editing my work, really giving me lots of feedback. I don't think that's for everyone. So I think some people would rather have more of a hands-off experience for their PhD. So it's kind of dependent on you as a person. I also think identifying a program where there are courses that align with what you want to teach, right? So in terms of coursework and being a TA, I wasn't necessarily teaching the classes that I would want to be teaching if I went into higher ed. But that being said, I still learned so much, like I said, from Rollo. So I think finding the right mentor, and then a program that's open to what you want to study, even if they don't have that as their expertise. But if they're going to support you, then I think that's incredible.
Yeah, that's so
That's so huge.
The mentor component as well, and the camaraderie. Did you get a chance to meet any of the students that you would be working with? Like, how was that cohort camaraderie?
It was amazing. And you know what's so crazy? I think one of my colleagues told me that a couple years beforehand, it was very toxic. So that was interesting for me too, that it wasn't necessarily the school, it was just the people who were there when I was there. Those who were in my cohort, we still talk all the time. I was just on my friend Steve, Dr. Selfridge. He has this really big YouTube channel. I was just on his podcast. He was in my PhD program. A couple of our authors, Amelia Garbish, Matt Claus, soon to be Carrie Renzoni, they all were in my PhD program. So we've really stayed pretty tight from there, which is great.
I love that. And that's actually, I'm so glad you said that. I experienced that firsthand in my master's program. My first year was incredibly toxic. I mean, just incredibly toxic. And my second year, when some people rotated out and new people rotated in, I mean, I was just on a Zoom call last night celebrating one of their birthdays, you know, like 5-6 years later. So that is such an important thing to consider for anyone. I think that it's don't be deterred from a program because you've heard in the past that it can be toxic, but also don't go to a program just because you've heard it's not toxic, because it can change.
Yeah, and I think it is good to talk to the current grad students, you know, when you're doing your interview at a program and see what they have to say. I did ask a lot of questions, you know, what's expected from you as a TA? What kind of support do you get? How is the workload? I talked to someone who had done it in 3 years because I knew that might be a possibility if I went back to the classroom. What does that look like? How do you do that? So just asking as many questions as you can, but it is crazy to me how competitive music educators can be, right? We are just trying to get kids to learn music well, right? And to love music. So the fact that there can be that kind of competition to the point where we're not going to share materials, we're not going to share what we're doing because there should be no competition when you get to that point, but it's a real thing.
Amen. So now this is like a perfect segue because then I'm curious into your thoughts. So yes, we are all about sharing. We are all about collaborating. You have like exhibited that in just a short amount of time that I've known you and seen that. And I hope to be the same for others as well. But then there's also a fine line, right? Of believing in what you're doing and putting certain things out there that is good work and saying, no, but actually I have to charge for this. Yeah. Case in point is F flat and this like venture into entrepreneurship and what you're doing with that. So whether we talk about this now, it's fine. We don't have to talk about it as well, but I would be interested to also gain your perspective on as you've moved into this entrepreneurship era of this already like weirdly competitive place, and you also want to be helpful for other people, but you also like it costs time and money and resources to build this and provide this stuff for people. How you balance all of that? I know that was a lot.
No, that's a great question. I've been so inspired by the work that you've done too. I feel we've just been watching you and your work is incredible. It's such a good question. I mean, I built this company so authors could get paid fairly, right? So instead of getting 5% royalties, they get 70% royalties. That's a big jump for an author. So I do believe in that wholeheartedly. When we thought about building a company, we thought about balancing things that we're giving for free and then things that we are asking people to pay for. And it is hard. How do you make that profitable? I don't know yet because we're not. You know, I was just telling my brother.
Let me just say that again real quick because like people don't necessarily know that. They think when you charge stuff on your website that you are always being profitable. And like Choir Baton is like really not profitable just yet. Like we're right about to turn the corner potentially. And by profitable, like I think as musicians, we have so many screwed up money mindsets. I don't mean like I'm taking home $1,000 checks. I mean, like I'm not dishing out money. We're at zero.
Exactly. Like it's not an expensive hobby. You know, for me, I am in music education. I love providing this platform. Our authors are making money. That is awesome. You know, our musical middles, my friend Danielle Larrick, who did a takeover for you. She's fantastic. She was our best-selling author in our first few months. And that was really exciting to see that she was getting paid for the work she was doing. Now, for me, as the owner of F-Flat Books, no, we are not profitable. For me, I'm okay. I have a full-time job, right? So for me, this is a way that I'm providing a platform for myself, right? I want to write books and have a place to publish them, but for others. But there is a point where we do have to turn a corner because my brother, bless his heart, has nothing to do with music education. He started this business with me believing that it could go somewhere. So I think, you know, I talked to Victoria Bowler once and she put it in really great perspective. And I said, I just feel bad charging music teachers. I know how much money we make. I know how hard we work. And she said, okay, I get that. But the same music teachers you're charging, they will spend $5 at Starbucks, you know? So if you are putting your content together and you are asking for $10 and $12, you can't feel bad about that, because if that's something that they consider valuable, they will pay for it. And so I do think we need to get better at that. I need to get better at saying, no, this is actually our value. This is our time that we've put in, just like you would for being a wedding musician, right? You wouldn't take an hourly wage of $15 for playing a wedding. It's much more money because of all of the time and preparation that you've put into becoming the musician you are today. So, you know, for you as a content creator, for you as an author, writer, speaker, podcaster, those are hours and hours and hours of expertise. And also, I've done some business coaching with a friend of ours who's in real estate. And so her perspective has been really cool. And she's been good at saying, like, know what you're the expert in. Don't be afraid to name it, and don't be afraid to share with others why you're valuable and not apologize for it. So yeah, there's definitely a fine line, and I think we need to be doing both, right? We need to be giving back, we need to be offering free stuff, but we also need to respect the fact that we are putting time and energy into this, and that's okay, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I would actually love to delve even more into like some of the business aspect and this, and maybe that's for a future podcast, because I do want to talk a little bit. I want to make sure people get to hear about F-Flat and the work that you're doing there. And I'm so excited because but like you with your publishing in particular are really changing the game of how we are like building resources for people, that it helps the author, but then it also just like helps other people, right? Like I think about my COVID choir course that I put together literally in 3 days when I saw that this was happening. And I was like, I have this idea, this idea, this idea. And there's no way any kind of publishing company could have pivoted that quickly to be so helpful.
Yes, absolutely. And that's the thing, like these publishing companies that I've worked with in the past, and I've written books, I've written chapters in books. I'm very grateful for them. I'm not out to say that all publishing companies are evil, not at all. But there is something to say about being in the field and knowing what the needs of your field are and being able to address them quickly, respond quickly. It's so important. And so we've done something similar, in general, we try to release 2 either books or resources per month. And then we have a community blog where we're constantly releasing content. And that is based on my capacity. So I have the capacity to release 2 things a month. So we have, our schedule where we have projects scheduled out. Well, when this happened, we just took a huge pivot and said, okay, we need to focus on free resources. We need to focus on things that we have already, Danielle Larrick, again, is a huge contributor. So I said to her, do you have things for free that you can share? I have things for free that I can share. If anyone else does, let's create a resource hub so people can just start grabbing what they need. And then I teamed up with one of our authors, Marcy Major, out of Westchester University. She's in the process of releasing a choral methods textbook with us. And so we've been communicating a bunch, and she had this idea, what if we could connect musical needs with college students who are currently displaced, right? So they're not in class right now, and we need to be giving them real experiences still. So instead of fabricating these lesson plans or assignments, let's have them actually doing things. So we created, and so we're hosting it on our platform. It's called Music Service Learning. So now people go to our website, and if they are a college student and they want to participate, they go to our website. If they are a college student and they want to participate, they can sign up on a Google form and say, hey, I'm a college student. I go to this school. I want to help. And then there's also a form for people who have musical needs. So at this point, I think we have 40 projects going on right now. And they range from a parent saying, hey, my kid is missing out on trumpet lessons because school is out. Can someone teach him? We have, nursing homes that are missing out on live music because they're closed off so they can get virtual concerts come in. We have teachers reaching out to us saying, I need practice tracks for this choral piece, or I need lesson plan ideas for my orchestra. So it is just this wide range of requests. And Marcy's been doing great work kind of pairing people together and managing those ideas. But then here's the exciting part, is that it's not going to stop with COVID, right? So these college students are developing all of these awesome materials that they'll put on our site, that they'll publish on our site. And then we're going to have this bigger reserve of options for people. And then now our blog is going to be used for them to report on the project. So we're going to have blog posts for every project. They're going to say, here's the problem, here was my solution, and here's that music service learning in action. So I am just so excited about this. I think it's given us a lot of purpose the past week when things have felt crazy, and we're just talking about how to keep it going.
What a freaking amazing idea.
It was Marcy's idea. I'm not going to take credit for it. She's great.
I love that. I was actually just speaking with some colleagues last night about stuff, and they were saying, like, in some ways it's been hard for them. This was a doctoral student, and he was saying, his work now that the last semester is done is they have to write a paper on some major works that they were doing. And we were talking, like, how do you feel about that? And he said, you know what, actually, I would much prefer to do that, because me learning to sing Camina Barana, like, I've already learned it 5,000 times. I know it from heart. So like me practicing rehearsal tracks means nothing for it, but like for me to write a paper on it, well, at least that's something in like tangible. And I think while there's a lot, I'm not poo-pooing like the virtual choir stuff and the rehearsal tracks and like all of the other really cool things that teachers are doing. I think this is just such a really tangible idea. It's just amazing. Like that, it's authentic.
And what do we need music for right now? Mm-hmm. We might not need it for learning rep for that festival. That's not going to happen. Let's be honest. We need music to connect people. We need music to heal. I've talked to some of my students. They need community, and they need something that will take their mind off of worrying about their grandparents they live with, or worrying about the fact that their senior year might be over, and so yeah, I think a lot of the chatter right now is on specific lesson plans and how do I rehearse my orchestra all at the same time and still work on this rep that we've started. And maybe we need to be okay with just letting that stuff go and really zooming out and saying, what do we need to focus on right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So then jumping back to a bit more with FFLAT, what are some of the resources that people do on it? Like, tell us a little bit if someone's listening and they're either a teacher that's interested in knowing, maybe there's someone that is interested in publishing on there, would you mind explaining a little bit more of that process for us?
Yeah, sure. So interested authors who email me, we send them a form to fill out that just basically gets some information on their background with writing and teaching. And our goal really is to also provide a space where you don't need to have a PhD, you don't need to have X, Y, and Z to be an author. I think it's super important. We have a project coming out soon that's written by undergraduates at University of South Florida. And so their professor, is putting their work together as a published volume. So that's really great. Because of our profit margin, we are DIY in terms of design and editing. So if someone doesn't feel strong as a designer or an editor, we provide an author packet that has step-by-step resources for designing through PowerPoint or Canva or whatever they want to use. And then basically like loose guidelines for editing. If someone is still like, I don't want to have to do that on my own, I don't want to think about that part, we do offer basically like a la carte services. So we have an in-house designer, we have an in-house editor that will do a more in-depth edit and design just based on their hourly rate. So we kind of offer two different versions, a DIY version and then a more structured version. And then once a project has been approved by us, we sort of set a due date, we give it a light edit, and then we provide authors with tools that they need to promote their work. So we give them a promotion packet and then, basically like a graphic to share that they've published with us. And then it's kind of up to them. So we have seen a huge difference in the authors who self-promote and how much they sell versus the authors that just kind of sit on their work.
Yeah.
I was going to say too, one thing that we really are passionate about and are trying to increase is interactivity within our books. So making it an ebook platform changes the game in that we can have active links, we can have video content. So for example, one of our authors, our band authors, you buy his book, but then you also get a Dropbox folder with parts for every specific instrument in your band. You get a YouTube playlist with tutorials on it. You also get access to a shared folder where you can video your students doing the activities in his book and upload it. So those are the projects I'm the most excited about, where it's not just a static piece of work, but it's very dynamic and you can constantly get new content from it. It's not just, one set piece.
To my knowledge, you guys are the only company out there doing this. Is that right?
I think so. We did a lot of Google searching early on so my brother, when I brought this up to him, he's like, okay, good idea, but someone's got to be doing that. I'm like, I don't think anyone is. I've looked. And he was kind of shocked. Like, this doesn't seem, he said, no offense, this doesn't seem like that great of an idea that, no one would jump on it. I think we have teachers pay teachers. That's great. But obviously it isn't music ed focused and it's more supplementary resource driven. And a lot of music ed publishers won't publish as e-materials. And I've gotten that from my own experience when I tried to publish as an ebook, and I know others who said the same thing. So yeah, it's not happening.
Yeah. So then I'm curious, this is a big, for me, like conceptualizing Choir Baton, having the passion, and then ideating it over the couple of years has taken a lot. So I don't want to put my experience and be like, oh, you've probably had the same, but I am curious, from having this vision to the execution that you're at, how has that been? How has that journey been? Has it been all butterflies and rainbows, or have you had moments where you're like, oh my God, what am I doing? This is no, help me, dear Jesus. I'm just going to go back into my room and make music.
The latter, most of the time. Yeah, no one knows what they're doing. I love listening to the podcast, How I Built This.
Monday morning.
Because every CEO is like, I didn't know what I was doing. I just started making yogurt. And now I own Stony Brook Farms or whatever it is, I think so many of us are hesitant to do things or build things because we just think, well, I don't know how to do it or build it. Yeah, no one does. I mean, we felt that with our company, like you're saying, I don't see anything else out there. you probably felt like that with Choir Baton. There's no formula to follow because you're building the formula as you go. And so that's really exciting, but also I think it's always refreshing for me to hear other people say, I have no idea what I'm doing. And so for me, there were so many things that came up in those early days. Like, okay, we need contracts for authors. How do you make a publishing contract for an ebook? And how do you prevent copyright issues? And how do you pay them? Like, how do you send out royalty checks? What do royalty invoices look like? All of these different things that I had no idea what I was doing. And part of the reason I brought on the authors that I did in the beginning, my launch team, is because they were okay with me not knowing what I was doing. And I was very clear about that. I said, guys, I love you. I will do my best, but things might be crazy and they might change. If you're okay with that, then let's do it. And luckily they all were. So I think it's helpful to have a team of people around you who will be understanding. But yeah, we still don't know what we're doing. We're figuring it out.
Yeah. And maybe then that's why I asked that question, because it is so like, I love when I hear other people, same as you, be like, I don't know, I'm just doing it. And if I don't know, I just Google it, like.
Yeah. And then I feel like you can also fall into the trap where you get one piece of negative feedback and you go, okay, yeah, I shouldn't be doing this. I'm going to quit. Why'd I even put myself out there? I don't know about you, but I didn't take Instagram stories of my face before this. I wasn't telling people what I thought about topics in a very visible way. And so the first couple pieces of negative feedback I got, I just wanted to shrink away and run away and close it down. And my brother, David, has been really great with that. And part of it is helpful because he's not in this field, so none of it bothers him. But he said, Sarah, just invite them in. Like, if people have another opinion than you, instead of getting defensive, invite them to write a piece for us. Invite them to write a dissenting blog post and to share their opinion and their story. And it's crazy how that just diffuses anger, tensions. And so I feel like that's been the hardest learning curve for me, is I don't do great with negative feedback. I'm such a people pleaser. I want everyone to be happy with everything we're doing. And that's just not reality if you're running a business. So
it's so true. It's so true. I got blasted when I threw up a landing page to collect email addresses for COVID stuff. I didn't know exactly at that point what it was going to look like, but I was in conversations with other people, beginning conversations. And I was like, something is going to come with this. And I want your email address, so then I can just stay in contact with you. And I want you to know that there are online resources out there to help you and that are ready to pivot in times like this. Let me show you how I'm going to show up. But when I set up the landing page, I was also busy doing something else, and I didn't realize I'd set up 4 automations that were totally screwed up. So you got spammed essentially from me when you signed up. And I popped over to Facebook, and a guy was like, this girl's a spammer, blah, blah, blah. And people were, and I was mortified. And he was like, well, I got 1, 2, and 3 emails. And that's when I knew, I went back through my automations, and I was like, crap, you did. I look like a spammer. And I was able to go to him and be like, hey dude, I'm so sorry. And I don't think he believed me, which is fine. But then but I was so glad. That's another thing too, right? Not letting that negative feedback, but then we can also use that to inform us and inviting them in. I think it's such good things to think about. And I actually went back 3 or 4 days later and sent him a Facebook message. And I was like, listen, I wish you'd done it in a different way, but I'm so glad you said something, because people would have been turned off and I wouldn't have known, because I didn't know what I was doing. I was just running with it.
Yeah. And I'm sure you've seen this too, because I know you have so many super fans. Some of them are my authors.
Oh, we just got perfect. Yeah. So finish that thought, and we'll see if people have questions. They can ask us right there on the Do Fluffy thing.
Well, I was going to say, people who know you, and I know that you have super fans, because some of them are our authors, but people who know you probably also come to your defense, right? If people talk to you and they really get to learn your heart and they know why you're doing it, they're going to know. But also, again, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about before. You are trying to turn this into a business, right? Because none of us can just do things for free all day, every day and pay the bills. So I think it's good to realize some people will never be okay with that. They will never be okay with you profiting off of anything, even if you're giving so much for free, and
Right.
you have to be okay with it. So
yeah, it's such a big journey. And I think too, what ultimately keeps me going is that like, once I begin to actually have some sort of a profit for this, then I can even do stuff better for people. And that, like, that keeps me going. And that is really, really, really energizing. So any questions, anyone? I know we like lost a couple of people within that. We'll see if they pop up. This has been awesome. Like I think I still want to like do this again. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and I love what you're doing. It's so encouraging, and
Likewise.
it's been fun. And it's so funny for me because, like I said, I haven't taught choir in probably 8 years or something, and I still love watching all of your takeovers. I love seeing what teachers are doing in their classrooms, and I know my colleague Chelsea, she's always like, did you see the Choir Baton takeover? Did you see what this girl did? Did you see what that person did? So people are getting a lot from it.
Hi, it's Danielle. I like only know people's Instagram names. Like I was talking to Emily, and I was like, and this is Choir Campbell. I mean, Emily, like I called Kate Foyles what happens in choir forever. I still call her that. No, Danielle, do you guys have any questions real quick before we jump off of here in a couple minutes? No, I also love seeing other women that are up here in this space and creating and adding our voices. And I like sometimes hesitate that but it needs to be said, right?
I feel bad for my brother every time I use #woman-owned, because I'm like, I know you own part of this, but no one cares if a white man is owning something. And but I do think we need to point that out, because it has not been traditionally true, especially in publishing, which is what I'm in. Go to other publishers' websites, look at their author pages. It is very male. It's very white, and it's very male. And that's also something that I really want to change. And David and I have talked about that. We're like, if people come to our author page and it isn't a colorful view of so many different voices from different places in the world, from different backgrounds, then we're not doing something right. And we're not there yet. It's something we're working towards. But I take a lot of pride in the fact that most of our authors are women. And being a woman and trying to get published, for a few years, I see that there aren't a lot of spaces like that. So absolutely.
Yeah, I struggled with my own issue, or not, with just my own things, and thinking being a secondary and now even adult choir content creator, and really being one of the only female ones out there too, right? So whenever I see another female out there, I want to be like, yes, we got this. And we didn't talk about this because, again, I struggle. I don't want to make it a big thing, but I think for me, motherhood in this space too is also something I've been sensitive about, whether I told myself I couldn't do a lot of things because I wanted to have kids, and I felt like that would impede my ability to. And then I got to be in my 30s and I didn't have kids, and I was like, wait, A, no one says that I can't do both or anything or everything, and B, I also wasn't having kids, so I was like, I better start doing it now. But I mean, you're a mom, and you are a mom, and you are a business owner, and you are an author, and you are a scholar, and you are a music teacher, and you are all the things, and you can do all the things as a woman. No one says you have to be siloed.
And again, seeing other people do it is so great. I love Jessica Peresta. She does the Elementary Music Teacher podcast. She has 3 kids. I love watching how she does that and balances everything. I try to bring my kids in to my life and my work as much as possible. I try to bring them to school with me. I try to talk about teaching and my work. My son has a keychain hanging from his book bag that he calls my company because it has our SLAT logo on it. So I do, and I have 2 daughters, and I'm encouraged by that they'll get to see me following my passion and doing all the things. But I agree, especially in academia, I feel like you're told that you're not going to be able to do it both or do it all. And I do see a lot of women who decide against it just for that reason. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I love that. As someone who, I didn't have an example with love to my mother. She was someone that didn't, in my, like, kind of go after some of her dreams, I think. And because she felt like she had to stay home and take care of the kids. I'm always so inspired by mothers that are no longer held captive to that mindset and are showing their daughters. I think that's just amazing. I love it. It's inspiring to me.
I think, and I mean, it's the same way with any relationship that you have, even if it's a pet that you're taking care of, or like a strong, romantic relationship or friendship, it informs the other sphere, right? So when I'm teaching music, I'm grateful to be in that space, but I also miss my kids, so that when I get home with them, I'm putting all the stresses of work aside and I'm really enjoying that time. And I think it's helped me compartmentalize my life better. So even if you don't have kids, you should try to do that. Try to compartmentalize. And when you take a step away from work, take a step away, be with friends, be with a bad Netflix show, be with something else. But I think, before I had kids, I feel like there's this expectation that I had to live at school till 10 p.m. and do all the things, and there was no excuse not to. So don't fall into that trap.
Thanks again, Sarah, for being
Yeah.
But more than that, thanks for the really amazing, I almost cursed, work that you're doing with F-flat. Like, I get so excited. Thank you. That's awesome.
Thank you for listening to the Choir Baton podcast. There are so many ways you can be involved in the Choir Baton community, and I'm so glad this is one of the ways in which you're being a part. If you're new to the podcast, or even to what Choir Baton is, or maybe you've been here for a while and I still want to remind you of this, you can be involved in many other ways. Each week, I send out a Choir Baton email with information about upcoming podcasts, opportunities, inspiration, and more. You can sign up for that email from the link in the show notes here. You can also follow us on Instagram, where different choir enthusiasts, whether it's teachers of choirs, private teachers, singers, composers, and more, they take over the Choir Baton account to give a glimpse into their world. You can also subscribe to the YouTube channel, where I post videos from the majority of our podcast interviews. If you're listening to this on iTunes, also make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so you receive each new episode when it's released. While you're there, you can also give us a 5-star review and leave a comment. I would love to know what interview really resonated with you, or if something new was said that you were able to learn or be inspired from a comment of our guest. And I know that our guests would appreciate that awesome feedback as well. People are also reading the information that you share on your experiences on that, so you can help inspire other people to become a part of the Choir Baton community by listening to the podcast. And finally, you can also learn more about Choir Baton through our YouTube page, where in addition to posting videos from the interviews, I share other information, as well as on our website. On our website, there's information about the teaching membership that you can join, the free Teaching Choir Amidst COVID course, and upcoming opportunities. We're also in the process of transcribing all of our podcast episodes, so you can read through those as well. My name is Beth Philemon, and I'm so grateful you're here today listening to this podcast and for your support of Choir Baton. Special thanks to Sarah Gulish for being an amazing guest with us today, and of course to our producer, Maggie Hemmedinger, for this awesome episode production. We are More People Singing.